Hello, ladies, gentlemen, squires, children of all ages. Welcome to the 88th episode of Blueshirt Bandwidth. I'm your host, Joe Fortunato, joined occasionally by my co-host, Chip. And Chip, this is really the perfect episode for you to be on. I was just saying this to you. You don't get compliments out of me very often, so you're getting one here. This is going to be the speculation trade episode. A lot of things going on. There's a lot. Literally, it felt like Eric and I finished the podcast, and then a million things happened that we definitely would have talked about on the podcast. So the timing here is perfect. But let's get some housekeeping out of the way. 88th episode, as we were just discussing. There's Lindros. I don't think Lindros works. Patrick Kane might work, though. The Patrick Kane episode.
There's one other option.
Who would it be?
And that's Ken Hodge.
It's not the Ken Hodge episode.
No? You don't want it to be the Ken Hodge episode?
I like the Patrick Kane episode because, A, it was somebody that the Rangers traded for, and we're going to talk a lot about trades today. And B, it could have been so good, and it kind of wasn't. And
I mean, you could say that about Lindros, too.
You could, yeah, but by the time the Rangers got Lindros, I was young when the Rangers got Lindros, to be fair, so I don't really have a recollection of, like, the way it was perceived. I'm assuming it was perceived like all Rangers things are, which is, oh, this is the greatest thing in the world, and oh my God. But, yes, anyway.
So I was 22 when they got Lindros, and I remember it being kind of perceived the same way that that it was perceived when they got Brad Richards. Which is
Mike Richards was a player in the NHL.
Yes. This would have been great had it happened 5 years ago.
So that was known then at the time. I know Lindros had a lot of head injuries, but we're talking about a time when that wasn't really respected in the way that it's respected now.
Correct. It was not viewed. It was viewed at least in, there wasn't Twitter or anything back then, but it was viewed as, hey, look, a team that has Lindros and Jaromir Jagr and all that would have been great in the 90s.
Well, Jagr was good too, though. So
yeah. So
what year did that happen? You would know. Was it like
2002? It was 2002.
I was in 2002, 13 years old. So yeah. I really had no frame of reference for whatever was happening.
It happened. It was in the 2001-2002 season, and he had just missed a full year. He had been out. He was 28 years old. He had missed the 2000. Was there a 2000-2001 season, or was that a lockout year?
I don't know. I'm sure Charlie, that piece of shit, will try to tell us at some point. Yes.
But on that roster with him was Hold on. This is a great podcast.
I was about to make the joke. This is the greatest podcasting of all time. Really, really bring the people. While you're doing that, welcome to Blueshirt Bandwidth. BlueshirtBanter.com, $85 a year gets you all your ad-free access to the New York Rangers, where you don't actually have to listen to Chip trying to figure out something while live on the show. You can just read the words he has already written on the website. And we don't pay him to do that. So it's basically free labor. All the more reason for you to listen. Make me the oil oligarch that I want to be.
The top 5 scorers in that season: Lindros, 73 points; Theo Fleury, 63 points; Mike York, 57 points; Brian Leetch, 55 points; Peter Nedved, 46 points.
I forgot about Fleury. Fleury also would have been a good one for the Mount Rushmore of personalities.
Yes.
That we didn't really talk about.
That was a Ron Lowe coached Rangers team.
Ron Lowe. We're just naming names at this point.
Yeah, it's like
remember some guys here with us on Blueshirt Bandwidth.
Yeah, it's like in the old PlayStation games where guys weren't allowed to have their names used because they weren't part of the union, and so they just made up names, and you get like Ron Lowe.
I guess you are permitted to ask a question. You had an opening pod question about this, as this is the 88th episode. How dominant would prime Eric Lindros be in this era? By the way, $85 a year gets you all your ad-free access to the New York Rangers. $40 a year gets you access to our Discord. It is the community tier. You can also ask questions in the question thread that Eric puts up every single week. You can hear your questions read on the podcast, potentially. Ship gets many of them. Here's one of them. As this is the 88th episode, how dominant would prime Eric Lindros be in this era? Back in his day, 6'4" was considered massive for a player. Combine that with his speed and physicality, and you have a menace on the ice. He would still be a big dude by today's standards, but not necessarily on the scale he was 25 years ago. Would he be in the conversation with McDavid, McKinnon, Eichel, and Matthews, or is he in that second tier? I don't remember enough of Eric Lindros in his prime to answer this question, but I continue to make the argument that Eric Lindros was that good when there was a 2-line pass rule. Like how many? Seriously, Wayne Gretzky would have scored a million points
easily.
I think Lindros would be a unbelievably I don't even want to say this. I'm not actually going to say it. I'm not doing it.
Say it.
Would he be like Matthew Tkachuk? Like maybe a little bit better version of him, a little bit bigger, a little bit more physical.
Yeah. I think he'd be Tage Thompson. Like good Tage, Tage Thompson vacillates between being okay, really great, and good. I think he'd be a consistently, as long as he's healthy, a consistently really great version of Tage Thompson.
Yeah, like a really, really good version, like the best version of Tkachuk. That would be
a center.
That would be correct. So more valuable inherently. I do not mean that as an insult, by the way, to Eric Lindros. If Eric Lindros wasn't as injured as he was, and by the way, not that we're getting off on this diatribe, but that is such a stupid argument in a lot of respects where it's like, oh, injuries are part of the game. Part of the reason why Henrik Lundqvist is one of the greatest goaltenders of all time is because he did it for so long and well for so long. Like sometimes you just get hurt and it's just part of the package. It is what it is. But Lindros was hurt for different reasons.
Yes, Lindros was hurt because Scott Stevens was a fucking asshole.
Yeah, like all devils.
Piece
of shit. Anyway, you're here. I guess we should read the Ombudsman Report. Eric would be mad at me if I didn't. Part of me wants to tell Charlie.
Charlie will be mad at you. If
I don't give a shit about Charlie being mad about anything. Charlie has wronged me too many times for me to care about what Charlie thinks about the situation, to be clear.
But Charlie can eviscerate you in prose in a way that Eric does not.
Well, this is why we have Eric on the show.
That's true.
Makes us feel better about ourselves. Episode 87. Only one Ranger has ever worn 87, and that, of course, was Donald Brashear. As Joe mentioned, Brashear cheap-shotted Blair Betts with a very late hit to the head in Game 6 of the 2009 Eastern Conference quarterfinals. I didn't realize that was a playoff game. That was the final action of Brashear's time with the Capitals. He was suspended 6 games, and the Capitals declined to dress him for Game 6 or 7 of their epic showdown with the Penguins in the following round. That summer, the Rangers signed Brashear to a 2-year deal, although he played only 36 games and was sent to Hartford in 2009-2010 before being traded to Atlanta and eventually bought out. Eric and Joe's travel schedule. Eric and Joe blame their inability to remember that Sean Avery had a big personality on their travel schedule. It is 4:36 a.m. on Monday morning, and I'm currently sitting in an Uber on my way to catch a 6 a.m. flight while I write this Ombudsman Report. But Joe and Eric have the difficult work travel schedules. Note, I did not travel for work the week I screwed up the Rangers draft positioning. Okay.
It's a weird flex, Charlie.
Yeah, Charlie, you're on fucking thin ice again. Wojtek Wolski, last-second winner. On March 4th, 2010, Wojtek Wolski scored a game-winning goal with 22 seconds left against the Avalanche in his very first game with the Coyotes after being traded from the Avalanche. There is absolutely no way that Joe was watching random Coyote games back in 2010. If you actually were, then I hope you get the help you needed. I wasn't, but I remember the goal. That would have been a goal that would have been on ESPN at the time. So, Ryan Gropp, 6th best forward, ? I'm already pissed off by whatever this is going to be clear. While looking back at the problems with the Rangers drafting and development over the years, Joe mentioned that in 2015, the Rangers had Ryan Gropp rated as their 6th best forward available when they drafted him in the 2nd round with the 41st overall pick. Gropp was the 28th forward drafted and never played a single NHL game. 29 forwards who were taken in that draft went on to have over 100 NHL points, including 9 who were selected after Gropp. He puts the entire list. You can read it. I'm not as mad about that as I thought I was. Caleb Malhotra, playoff heater. Joe mentioned that Caleb Malhotra's draft stock may be rising, thanks in part to the playoff heater he's on, after posting 84 points. Well, first of all, he went on the heater. It's over now. Allow me to ombudsman you, Charlie. The playoffs are done for him. Yeah. After posting 84 points in 67 games for the Brantford Bulldogs of the OHL, Malhotra had 13 goals and 13 assists in 16 playoff games during the team's run to the OHL's Eastern Conference Finals. What is the Ombudsman Report there? We're just saying facts with Charlie. Is Brett Howden good? As has been discussed many times on the show, Brett Howden is on a generational heater for Vegas this postseason. Joe asked the question, is he having an amazing playoffs or is he good now? Howden, I'm pretty sure the point was he was having an amazing playoffs. I don't think I'm asking if he's good now. Howden had 22 points in 58 games this season and now has 13 goals in 19 games this postseason through Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final. It should be mentioned. By the way, Charlie, it's Stanley Cup Final, not finals. Just delete that out there for you. Did Howden score last night?
Don't remember.
I don't remember either. I just know Vegas lost. Howden is shooting at 36.1% this postseason. That'll keep up. Looking under the hood per Evolving Hockey, Howden had a .58 expected goals per 60 this season, which would have put him above Mika Zibanejad and below only Fox, Panarin, and Lafreniere among Rangers regulars. That's interesting. He's not expecting. Ethan
Beckheltz.
Yeah, he's saying Joe pronounced his name Belshitz. It is Belchess. I don't think I said his name. I think it was Eric.
I don't know, but if it was Eric, it would have been. You wouldn't have pronounced the L at all. It would have been.
No, that's true. I don't think I said this, Charlie. I'm not kidding, dude. You better hope I'm wrong and that I said this shit, or else there's going to be serious.
It would
problems.
have been Beschitz if it was Eric.
Potential 5th for 11 plus 15 trade. While floating the idea of the Rangers wanting to see who's available at 11 before trading the 5th pick for the 11th and 15th, Joe joked that somebody might get drafted and not put the jersey on. Or put the jersey on, but not too tightly. Football fans around New York might recall Eli Manning being drafted 1st overall by the San Diego Chargers in 2004. I don't know why I'm getting fucked up with that.
Because you're
refusing to put on the jersey because he had already demanded a trade. I didn't know that, actually. Manning was immediately traded to the Giants for a package centered around Phillip Rivers, and while Rivers debatably was a better quarterback in the NFL, it is safe to say the trade worked out well for the Giants. Rivers is not a better quarterback than Eli Manning.
No, that is not a debatable.
That is not even a remotely debatable thing. Eli Manning has 2 Super Bowl rings. Phillip Rivers has 73 children. Team relocation. Every time new NHL markets are discussed, Joe is adamant that Atlanta should receive a team next. This is surprising because Joe hates Charlie, and Atlanta getting an NHL team would mean that Charlie's current hometown would get a team. It is shocking to see Joe advocating for something that would help Charlie see more NHL games without getting on a plane, typically at 6 a.m., or driving 4 hours to Nashville. I don't not want them to have a team.
And why is Charlie talking to himself, referring to himself in the third person?
I'm not sure. Eric Christensen, beer leaguer. I can't even see this because of the Riverside thing. Joe mentioned that, God damn it, hang on, everybody, as we continue doing terrible podcasting. Joe mentioned Rangers legend Eric Christensen doing as he wished in a beer league game against him in college. I wasn't on the ice. I also made that clear. Discussing how much better than us professional athletes are. Christensen played 132 games across parts of 3 seasons for the Rangers and is best remembered for being stopped on the first attempt of the shootout in the season-ending loss to the Flyers on the last day of the 2010 season. That was the Ole Jokinen, wasn't it? And that concludes the Ombudsman Report.
Ryan Gropp update. He scored 38 points this year for the Hanover Indians in Germany's 3rd league.
Well, he's still playing.
Yeah.
At what point do you give it up? Like, you're in Germany's 3rd league. I have nothing against Gropp, by the way. Whatever. It's not his fault. The Rangers are stupid, but.
Yeah, but he's 29 years old. How many other marketable skills do you really think he has? If someone's willing to pay him to
what are
play
they
hockey
paying in the Germany 3rd league?
2 brats and a beer. I don't know.
There is a famous story during the lockout when Jaromir Jagr played in, I think it was the Germany second league, and he had 11 points in one game. He had a goal and 10 assists. Yeah, it's the best. And the other part of that is unverified, but I heard, was his payment for the game was a schnitzel sandwich with mayo, which is even better.
It is even better.
All right. It's the Patrick Kane episode. I have a hard out in like an hour. So we're just, this is the perfect episode for Chip to be on. Chip, I think we start with Dylan Larkin, right? That's the place to go here.
Yeah.
Dylan Larkin, center for the Detroit Red Wings. A man who has been at the center of 43 of Chip's My Trade Proposals Suck, has requested a trade from Detroit. Now, there's two threads to pull at here. The first is the impact it has on Vincent Trocheck. The second is the now just rampant debate of a player with a no movement clause asking to go to 3 specific teams should that player lose their no movement clause, which I think you're on the side of, if I'm not mistaken.
So
let's pull at that thread first because it's easy.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I've asked the question, should the CBA be amended, to say if you're a player with a no movement clause and you make a formal request, meaning you have to file that request with the league that you are requesting a trade, should you lose your trade protection for the remainder of that league year? That way you're not in a situation where Steve Yzerman now is only able to trade Larkin to the 3 teams that he's put out there, theoretically. Now, Eric in our group chat said there's no way that the players would give that up without anything in return, and I agree. So I propose that if you're a team and you trade a player or you ask a player to waive his no movement clause to facilitate a trade, the team would have to pay a bonus equivalent to 10% of the remaining value of the contract to
Why
that
are we
player
doing
when
this,
this deal
though?
gets consummated.
Why we're not it? A no movement clause is a negotiated right that has to be agreed to by the team before it's signed. I understand that things happen. Now, I get where people are coming from, where they're saying Dylan Larkin is providing 3 teams. My camera's all fucked up. Apologies for the people who are watching on Spotify. He's given 3 teams, most of whom it's Minnesota, Vegas, and
Florida.
Who's the third? And Florida. Florida and Vegas have 0 assets really to give up. Minnesota has some, but they may not be completely interested in doing this, although I'm sure Bill Guerin is. And the argument that keeps coming around is he's strapping the team. They don't have people that they can trade him to, right? This is not an ideal situation for Detroit. Whatever, then don't trade him. If you there's no reason. I understand where you're coming from, where it's, hey, he's kind of being a little bitch and he has a no movement clause and now he's holding Detroit hostage. He negotiated that no movement clause. He has that no movement clause. He is permitted to do with it which he will, as we saw Jacob Trouba do 3 years ago. Just like the team is within their rights to use whatever leverage they have to get out of things, just like we saw Chris Drury do with Barclay Goodrow. I don't think anything needs to be amended here. If you have an issue as Steve Yzerman with the teams that he gave, and I know it's not ideal, you just don't trade him. Now,
sure,
we can get into the argument about why we're here or not. You can't say Larkin didn't give Detroit a fair shake here.
No, and I would never. Larkin has been very clear for years about how unhappy he was with the way Steve Yzerman approached the trade deadline. And the column that I posted on Banter talks about that, where, people who say this came out of nowhere, the fuck it did. All you have to do is go back and read what Larkin has said since the trade deadline 2 seasons ago, when Yzerman did nothing and Larkin was pissed off because he thought that was a team that was ready to contend. And he said it would have been nice if management had augmented our roster a little bit. And then you look at what Yzerman did over the offseason, where all he did was bring in Van Riemsdyk and Gibson. And then at the trade deadline, he brought in the ghost of Justin Falk and the shell of David Perron. Again, not helping. So I completely understand where Larkin is coming from. I have no problem with where Larkin is coming from. I'm just saying if we want to avoid situations like the Trouba thing where the player is all of a sudden pissed off, or situations like this where now you're setting it up where Larkin is either going to go to one of those three teams, or Yzerman's going to have to say, you're going to have to expand your list or you're stuck here. And you're now dealing with a hand grenade in your clubhouse. Do you try to come up with ways to better facilitate these deals happening where everybody gets what they want at the end of the day? I'll also just on the list that Larkin submitted, I think Minnesota is an easy one to pull together. I think Florida could be interesting. Like, if you're Bill Zito, would you do Lundell and 9 for Dylan Larkin?
Let me just before we get to the actual trade pieces, because that's going to be the next part of the conversation. Generally speaking, players don't sign contracts with no movement clauses because they intend to hold the team hostage. They're doing it because they want to remain in control of where they go, presumably to remain with the team that they're with. So a lot of this discussion that I've seen about how Larkin is fucking over the Red Wings and, this is a problem that needs to be solved. I'm just not there. I'm sorry. I just don't think it is. And I agree, this is a shitty situation for the Red Wings to be in. It is a shitty situation of their own making that they've done to themselves. And I don't really think that a problem needs to be solved with the no movement clauses. I don't think that's a major issue here. It's unique. It's annoying. If I am a Red Wings fan, I am beside myself right now because one of the best players on my team, and a player who, if they did not have a no movement clause, would be probably the hottest commodity on the market, is now putting my team in a position where I can't get maximum value for them. And I have to take, at best, a 60 to 70 cent on the dollar trade. I get why they're mad. I just don't think it's a problem that needs to be solved. I think this is a unique situation, and I don't think players sign no movement clauses to specifically give themselves the ability to fuck a team over. I just don't think that's why they do it. They're doing it because they want control.
I agree.
They earned that control.
And we had this conversation about Adam Fox, which was
and Jacob Trouba, by the way. Just to be clear, this is not like this is not like, oh, it's not happening to the Rangers, I don't care. I was on record that there was absolutely nothing wrong with Jacob Trouba exercising his no movement clause rights. He had the right to do that.
Same way there was nothing wrong with Chris Drury using the ability to waive Barclay Goodrow.
Correct. It's dirty. The Barclay Goodrow one was a little bit messier, but he is well within his rights to do that.
Yeah. I agree. Contracts have clauses, and because they have clauses, you can execute things that are not specifically spelled out in said clause. I'm just throwing out a possibility to clean up those situations when they occur, because people do change their minds.
To your question about Florida, if you're Florida, do you feel like you need Dylan Larkin? If I'm Florida, listen, you have to have a meeting about it, right? You're one of the teams that he put on there. I'm having a conversation internally that's like, this team was very injured this year. We won the Stanley Cup 2 years in a row. We went 3 years in a row. Why give up the assets? We have a good draft pick this year. Let's just get healthy and not spend for another expensive player that's now locked up, that I believe will keep the no movement clause, correct? Or does he lose it when he goes to Florida?
No.
He keeps it, right?
He keeps it.
What do you have to really gain? And I get you're gaining Dylan Larkin, but Florida is not the team that I think needs to do this. The team that I think needs to do this, unfortunately for the Rangers, is Minnesota.
Yes.
This is another USA Mafia, was on the gold medal team, a really good way to convince Quinn Hughes that he should be staying type of trade.
College teammates with Quinn Hughes.
I didn't even know that. So even more so reason for this to be something that Bill Guerin needs to be all over. And that will intersect with the Vincent Trocheck piece when we get there. But I don't for the teams that were named, like Vegas, sure, maybe they can make something happen here. If they lose in the Stanley Cup final, maybe they're even more, intrigued in doing something like this and feel like they need to. It's just an instigating event for them. I don't see how Minnesota's not all over this, especially if the asking price is going to be, a first Yurov Stramel, like in the range of what we as Ranger fans would want for Vincent Trocheck. Whether or not that's going to happen, obviously, is a completely different situation. But like, if I'm Bill Guerin, I'm here now. If you're Detroit, you want way more than that for Dylan Larkin.
Yes.
And I don't know if Bill Guerin has anything else to really give at this stage in the game. But if you're Bill Guerin, I'm assuming this is like a 5-alarm fire for you, that you have to get your hands on this guy.
Yeah, I think if Dylan Larkin costs Bill Guerin what Chris Drury wanted for Vincent Trocheck, I think he pulls the deal together tomorrow.
I just think it's going to be more.
Yeah, I think it could be. I think it could be interesting if Florida is willing to put Lundell and 9 on the table. I think that's a better offer than what Minnesota would be offering. But then again, that's a trade within the division. Does Yzerman really want to trade Dylan Larkin to a division rival?
Well, it just takes the tax up. And this is what it gets into. If there are 3 teams that are on Larkin, and look, to the other point, if I am Steve Yzerman, I'm obviously reaching out to those teams because it's cleaner and it's easier. But if no trade materializes from those teams, I'm turning around to Dylan Larkin like, you're either expanding your list or you're staying here, and we'll see you at training camp.
100%.
So if nothing kind of comes about in that instance, then what happens? Like, to your point, Florida's involved in this because Florida was named as a team that he would be willing to go to. Florida was not on any list for Vincent Trocheck, who would also be a really good fit for them from a cap perspective, how long they would be able to have him, that it's not like another rental, playoff performer, USA piece as well with Zito, like all of that. He was never on that I saw. Like, Florida was never hovering around Vincent Trocheck. So is Florida actually into this? Now, Larkin is a different player than Trocheck, to be fair. A much better player, probably a better fit for what Florida is looking for anyway. But maybe Florida, let me ask you this question. On a scale from 1 being not impacting at all to a 10, which is completely catastrophic, where does this trade request hit on the impacting the return for Vincent Trocheck trade?
7.
Okay.
So here's why. If this gets back to the column I wrote. If Larkin is traded to Minnesota, you're taking 2 Trocheck suitors off the table, right? Because Detroit was in on Trocheck, Minnesota was in on Trocheck. If Detroit trades Larkin, odds are they're going to go the other way. They're going to start trading away guys like Alex DeBrincat. They're going to, put Andrew Kopp up there.
I think
guys.
I firmly disagree. You don't think Yzerman is coaching for his job now, or GMing for his job now?
I think it depends. I think it depends on what Yzerman is selling to. So let's back up and look at Detroit for a minute. Yzerman can do one of 3 things, right? He can trade Larkin and still try to contend, which is going to be a challenge because you're now trading your number 1 center and you just don't find number 1 centers around. He can trade Larkin and talk to his ownership about resetting Detroit's timeline, in which case he's trading away DeBrincat and Kopp and a bunch of other guys. Or he can turn to Larkin and say, what do I have to do to make you rescind this trade offer or trade request? And who do I need to bring in? Because in which case he ups his offer for a guy like Vincent Trocheck. And he says, and we will go all in, go soft tamper Quinn Hughes, tell him not to sign an extension, and we will bring him in as a free agent. All those things are on the table if that's maybe what it takes to get Larkin to to stay because, again, Larkin's trade proposal, we agree, was based or trade request. I keep fucking saying that, and Charlie's going to kill me for it. Larkin's trade request was based on the fact that he's frustrated with the lack of movement from Yzerman. So maybe this does get Illich to turn around to Yzerman and say, I don't give a shit what you have to do. You make Dylan Larkin happy. You go out and make those deals. You have
just
cap
feel
space,
like that
you
would have
have-
happened already. Like if I'm Yzerman, my seat's already been hot.
Has it?
There's no way. Now, when you say has it, you're talking about has ownership basically put a timestamp on him, right?
Yeah.
Like this.
I mean,
So I can't
Yzerman's
say
beloved in Detroit from his playing days. It's hard to fire an icon.
I don't disagree with you, but I'm also telling you that their best player and like homegrown talent just asked out of Detroit.
Yes.
The team hasn't made the playoffs in how many years?
A bunch.
Yzerman has been a shell of the guy that we got in Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
And now Larkin wants out. There's no way there's not mounting pressure from ownership that he needs to. And the only reason I bring that up is I'm not so sure Detroit would be out on Trocheck in the event that they have to trade Dylan Larkin. If anything, that gives them more assets and more things to play with. You're telling me that Detroit is going to sign, the ownership in Detroit is going to sign up for another bunch of years not making the playoffs? We're going to do a full rebuild?
Yeah, maybe. Look,
I can't see that. I really can't.
I don't see only because even if the trade is Urov, right? If Urov comes in there, you think Urov replacing Larkin at the top center position is gonna, even if they do, assuming they go out and trade for Trocheck, you're now talking Urov, Trocheck, Andrew Kopp as your top three centers. I don't, and probably Kane is gone. DeBrincat, who knows what he's thinking? He's in the last year of his contract. Who knows what he follows up with after? I mean, if he turns around and says, "You know what? I'm not re-signing here now that you've traded Larkin." What do? You have to trade him. You can't let him go for nothing.
Yeah, I'm hesitant on the idea that Detroit would be willing to buy into more. Now, by the way, and Eric and I say this a lot when we have these conversations, this is I'm thinking the way that I feel like Detroit ownership is thinking. You and I are both in agreement that this team is not, if they weren't playoff contenders before, they're not going to be playoff contenders now.
Correct.
Without Dylan Larkin. And
Correct.
you just have to eat this, basically. I don't necessarily know if that's going to happen. The other thing that I think is interesting is, let's say Florida does pony up for him, right? And I apologize, I keep coughing. I'm getting over a cold, and it's manifesting like this now because this is how it goes. Do you foresee a place where, okay, Minnesota just missed out on Trocheck, or just missed out on Larkin, now they go back in on Trocheck, or another team that thought that they would have a shot at Dylan Larkin didn't get a sniff at him at all, removes Minnesota? Like, there was much more interest from what I could gather from Trocheck just because of the length of the contract and how much money he was making versus what's been sort of out there about Larkin. Now, granted, Larkin has more control because he has the full no trade protection, but it's not ideal. Let me make that clear. We're not Kool-Aid drinking that the Dylan Larkin request is somehow a really good thing for the Trocheck market. It's not. It's manifestly a really bad thing. But I don't know if it's a complete disaster. I just think it puts the Rangers in a position where they now need to wait. They're no longer the driving force behind this, and they now need to wait and see what options are going to be on the table for them. And
Correct.
where Drury was kind of driving the boat before, and we never thought the trade was going to happen before the draft anyway. It's just not feasible. Now they have to wait and see how Larkin plays out. But if one of those teams, not that I think Vegas has all that much they could offer the Rangers, but if Vegas loses in the Stanley Cup final to Carolina, which may happen, and they decide they're going all in because they need the next piece, maybe that does force some action from Bill Guerin. And that's really where this sits, is the Bill Guerin piece.
Yeah, listen, I do think there's a there's a world in which both of these deals happen before or at the draft because, like, for example, just using Florida again, if Florida doesn't have any draft assets after this year, so if they're going to make a big move, it's got to include this year's pick.
Yep.
Um,
And that number 9 may end up being really valuable. There's going to be some
Yeah.
good players that are floating around there.
yeah, and there are teams that have multiple picks that might want to get in on a Vincent Trocheck type deal, and if so, all right, so let's say for the sake of argument that Dylan Larkin is traded right after the playoffs to Vegas. Okay. And now you've got Florida and Minnesota both looking at Trocheck, and Florida is willing to offer the number 9 pick plus to get Trocheck. Minnesota then has to pull the deal together quickly this year anyway, because they need to make sure that they get the trade done before he's traded somewhere else for a pick in this year's draft, if that makes sense. So there is a world in which these guys get traded before or at the draft. Um, I do think that it also, yeah, I think you're spot on that there are going to be teams, whether it's Boston, uh, less Montreal, less Toronto, because I don't think either Larkin or Trocheck are going to Canada, who miss out on these guys and will be interested in making offers. Boston, Pittsburgh is another one. Carolina could be one if they lose in the final.
I mean, I don't see how Montreal is not kicking the tires on Vincent Trocheck.
I think they're absolutely doing it. I don't know if Vincent Trocheck is willing to go to Montreal.
Correct.
And he does have trade protection.
But
so
let's also add right now, remember that Vincent Trocheck cannot update his trade protection until
Correct.
July 1st.
Correct.
So the trade protection that Vincent Trocheck is operating with right now was operated or is being based off of a timeline a year ago when he probably didn't think he was going to be traded.
Yes, and I think, and I'm looking it up for more great podcasting, I think Trocheck had more trade protection this year than he does after July 1st.
I think he goes from either 12 to 10 or 15 to 10, but the point is if he was making it around, okay, I'm just submitting a list, here are the teams that I don't want to go to, like he's going to put thought into this now come July 1st. And Chris Drury has the list of people that he would be willing to go to, right now. So up until July 1st, Drury can play this game and see where he's going. Maybe Montreal's not on that list.
Maybe.
And it will be, moving forward, but it's not today. And I think that's where this is going to get a little sticky for just how this ends up playing out. Because if I am Chris Drury and I have options on the table with players and I look around and I'm like, oh, look at this. I actually can. I know Trocheck wants to stay out east. I don't think he wants to go to Canada, but these teams weren't on his list before. Like, you may need to play that game. And there's not a damn thing Trocheck can do about it right now.
Yeah, it's another reason to accelerate the timeline and try to get it done before
if you need
1st.
to. If you need to. Those teams, because I like the idea of Boston. I like the idea of, I don't think Florida is going to be in on Trocheck at all. The Minnesota piece is, we knew there was interest. We knew there was an Olympic piece. We also knew the fact that, Bill Guerin just lost the playoff series where his penalty kill was terrible, and we saw what Vincent Trocheck did in the Olympics. And it just made too much sense for it not to make sense. And I am interested to see where some of this goes here. But there's no way to not think that Dylan Larkin's trade request, he's a better player. He's a more valuable player. He plays at a level that Trocheck simply doesn't.
He's a younger player.
He's younger. It is a bit. Trocheck is the Dylan Larkin that we have at home, to use the meme that the kids would use. And again, an insinuation that this does not impact the New York Rangers trade market for Vincent Trocheck is just head in the sand nonsense. I also don't think it means Vincent Trocheck is not going to be traded. I also don't think it means Vincent Trocheck is not going to get a better return than the Rangers were offered at the deadline, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the major impact is, again, and it can swing either way. It's either you're taking 2 suitors off the board, you're
Or you're leaving
possi-
someone hurt that they didn't
or-
get him and going out
Yep,
to get him.
you're leaving someone very hurt that they didn't get him, or you're getting a very desperate Detroit Red Wings team that would be interested in acquiring him. Because I don't know what conversations are happening behind the scenes in Detroit after hearing the request, but I have to imagine at least one of them from ownership to Yzerman is, what will it take to make Larkin happy?
It would have to be that, but it may be too late for that.
Maybe not. Maybe it's, I don't like the trade proposals that are out there from the teams you gave me. I can go out, I can make this trade to bring in Vincent Trocheck tomorrow. Will that make you more comfortable? If we had Vincent Trocheck here, and we re-sign Patrick Kane, or we don't re-sign Patrick Kane, we sign Alex Tuch, and all of a sudden we give you Alex Tuch and Vincent Trocheck, will that make you happy?
Fair, but don't you think that conversation would have happened already?
No.
Or do you
not
think Larkin just
necessarily.
turned around and said, you know what, fuck this, fuck these guys, I'm out?
I think that's what happened. I think Larkin turned around and he said, I've been telling them for 2 fucking years that they have been moving too slow for me. I'm done.
I'm telling you right now, Chip, if you do that shit with me, you're going to have a serious fucking problem.
I would never do that with you, Joe.
Good.
You
That's
move.
right.
You do not move slow enough.
That's the that's the right thing to say. I just don't. Back to the Trocheck piece. I have been toying with ways for the Rangers to get Viggo Bjork, and I don't think it's possible because I don't think they're taking him at 5th overall. Even though I would, I think I'm on record there. I would, and even at 5, as long as none of the other forwards are there. But I think he's the type of guy that the Rangers kind of have to, swing for.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can get in at 9, like if you could somehow convince Florida to give you 9, and it's not going to be Lundell, I don't think, obviously. But if you, the Rangers kind of need to think about that a little bit. And the one thing that we've been talking about a lot, and I think it's getting lost in this, Liam Greentree is coming next year, more than likely with the Rangers, especially as things kind of deteriorate. So the Rangers are going to have some younger talent that can kind of step in. And the reason why Yurov is so intriguing from Minnesota is A, it's a position of value, right? He's a center. But B, he's 22 years old. So it fits the timeline. When Larkin requested a trade, and we didn't know what the list was yet, the Rangers were never going to be on that list. I saw some people who were like, oh, see, the Rangers aren't a destination. Like, dude, why would Dylan Larkin want to go to the Rangers? 2 years in a row, they haven't been in the playoffs. Doesn't look like things are moving all that much faster. Sure, JT Miller exists, I guess. You didn't play with Adam Fox. Mike Sullivan, great, but that's not what he wants. He wants to go to the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. That's why he's doing this.
So why would he come to the Rangers? Now, granted, Dylan Larkin would make the Rangers much better, potentially a playoff contending much better. But I'm not betting on that if I'm Dylan Larkin. And he picked 3 teams that, lo and behold, 2 of them are either in the Stanley Cup this year or the Stanley Cup final or won it 2 years in a row. And the other one was a team that probably really just missed an opportunity to maybe make a little bit noise and thinks that they're a Dylan Larkin away. It was never going to be the Rangers. There's no reason for the Rangers to be in those types of conversations. Furthermore, the point that I made that pissed a lot of people off, he doesn't fit the timeline. The guy's going to be 30.
Yes.
The Rangers don't need more of those. With more no movement protection? Come on.
I mean, that gets into what is the Rangers' timeline, and the answer is we have no idea. Like, if they're still trying to win with 30-year-old Igor, 30-year-old Adam Fox, 100-year-old JT Miller, then Dylan Larkin does fit the timeline. Problem is, that's not the timeline we want them to win with, or we want them to operate under. I have no idea what the timeline they're talking about is.
I don't know what the timeline is. I know what the timeline isn't. And the timeline isn't next year.
Fair.
And Dylan Larkin is a next year timeline move.
So for Trocheck, does Florida do if the Rangers eat 50% of his contract, get him down to being like a 3.2 whatever $million player, does Florida do 9 and something like Evan Rodriguez?
This is hard for me because and we've had this conversation before, right? I know what I know about Vincent Trocheck, and I think the Rangers, if they were able to get rid of him, are actually selling high on him right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's us knowing that. The other piece here is, why does Florida need to do anything?
Because Florida at 9 is not getting a player who's going to help them this year, and most likely.
But don't you at some point have to pay the piper?
Yeah, but if Bill Zito cared about paying the piper, he didn't give out the contracts he gave out last year or the contracts he gave to in season to like Nico Mikkola. He could give a shit about paying the piper. That is someone else's problem. That's why I've always said GMs do not care about how long-term contracts age, because for the most part, they're not going to be the ones who see the end of it. Bill Zito wants championships. He wants more championships. He wants to see his name and his players on the Stanley Cup as many times as possible before he decides to retire to a fishing lodge in, Newfoundland. And
if he decides to do that at all.
How Sam Bennett's contract ages, how Brad Marchand's contract ages, how Nico Mikkola's contract ages, that is someone else's problem. Nobody cares in Florida about that. So if he can look at it and say, Vincent Trocheck gives me 2 more Stanley Cup wins, helps me get 2 more Stanley Cup wins, because then I'm going, my centers are Barkov, Lundell, Trocheck, Bennett possibly is my 4th line center. Who is standing up to that?
It's fair. That is, again, and I don't think this is copium, but that is another circumstance that would be good for the Rangers, right?
Yeah.
Like for those things to happen. I hope Florida gets in on it. I would love to get my hands on, if I had the 5th and 9th overall pick in this year's draft, I think that puts the Rangers in a really advantageous position. And again, I can't stress this enough. Like, the Rangers do have a 1st-round pick in Liam Greentree who is coming.
Mm-hmm.
Plus the Rangers have the 26th.
Heavy.
What?
He ain't just breathing heavy.
He ain't just breathing heavy. And they have another 1st-round pick that I'm curious to see what they do. I really am curious to see how things play out after 5, because there is an argument to be made that it makes sense for the Rangers to trade down from 26 if somebody's not on the board they love, get a couple of 2nd-round draft picks. This is one of the draft picks in the 2nd round that the Rangers lost to get rid of Patrick Nemeth. So the Rangers jump from 2 picks in the 1st then to the 3rd round. I don't know. There's a lot of things that are at play here, but
they do have a 2nd-round pick.
They do. It's Carolina's. Yeah. Which at this point is going to be a 3rd-round pick anyway, almost doesn't even matter. But yeah, I'm just of the mind that the Rangers, look, it's not good for Vincent Trocheck. They're the Vincent Trocheck market, I should say, that Dylan Larkin has requested a trade. It behooves the Rangers for that to get figured out as quickly as possible. However, I don't think it's all doom and gloom, and I do think there are some teams that are going to kick the tires on Vincent Trocheck simply because they're not on the list of teams that are approved by Dylan Larkin. Because, as we keep saying, outside of Alec Tuck, there are 0, and I mean 0, free agents of any repute that are on the market. Johnny Brodzinski might be the 3rd best player on the free agency market. Like, for real.
Mm-hmm. Definitely the 3rd best center. I don't know about 3rd best player.
Like, he's going to get the bag because nobody's available.
He's going to get a bag. Yeah.
And good for him. I hope Johnny does.
Someone was saying that if the Rangers want to unalive him, what they'll do is they'll sign Mason Marchant for 4 years at $4.5 million. Like, yeah, it's probably about right.
Do we talk about Peter Laviolette reuniting with Artemi Panarin? I just don't understand. Listen, it is not Peter Laviolette's fault what happened in New York. At least the genesis of what happened. I keep using the house fire analogy. He didn't start the fire. It was not his fault. It was not, like, that was a Chris Drury thing.
He didn't light it, but he certainly didn't fight it.
He, like, a guy who openly was like, you know what, things got hard and I'm not fucking here anymore. I'm not doing my job. I'm not going into the locker room. I'm not talking to these guys. I'm not doing anything. Sorry, not going near my hockey team.
if you're Panarin and like Kevin Fiala asks you, or um, one of the other guys on that team asks you, what was it like to be coached by Peter Laviolette? How do you answer that question?
Does Panarin actually care, though?
I don't know if Panarin cares, because Panarin operates the same way no matter who the coach is.
Correct. He doesn't care.
But like, if someone asks you to describe what it's like to be coached by Peter Laviolette, is your answer, if you're Panarin, I have no idea, I didn't even realize he was my coach? Or is
Well,
it...
that was the first. Like, here's the thing. Laviolette does bring structure. I can't necessarily say he brings accountability, but like Laviolette, one of the big requests that the Rangers had when they fired Gerard Gallant was like, this guy's not even talking to us.
Right.
So they brought in Peter Laviolette. Peter Laviolette, while a fire-breathing taskmaster, if you will, is a very player-friendly coach. For the most part, those teams love him. He's a guy who's brought 3 different teams to the Stanley Cup final, only won once. He won with Carolina. He brought Nashville and he brought the Flyers. He lost both of those series. He took the Rangers to the Eastern Conference final. I am sure that there will be a first-year bump, as there always is with a new coach, but for, Peter Laviolette specifically. And they'll look okay. And then everyone's going to be like, oh, look at this. See, this is what we told you. Peter Laviolette's not a bad person, whatever. And then it's going to just fall off the rails. The problem that I would have if I'm Kings ownership is I have a team that lost to the Edmonton Oilers. Was it 3 years in a row in the first round?
Yeah.
Then I lost in the first round again this year. And I'm bringing in somebody who, when things got hard in New York, literally quit and admitted that he quit. This was not quiet quitting. This was answering a question in a press conference where he was like, I don't go in the locker room after games. Who openly sat the Rangers' best prospect for healthy scratches for no reasons at the end. Like, was outwardly vindictive. And you're bringing that into a locker room with a team that has not had any version of playoff success that you would like them to.
And is, by the way, they're watching Anze Kopitar retire.
Correct.
Which
Maybe
means
they'll
they're
trade for
going...
Vincent Trocheck, although he wants to be out east.
Yeah. Which means they're going to have to rely very heavily on Quentin Byfield taking the next step. Is Peter Laviolette the guy to help a young player take the next step in his career? I don't think so.
I don't think
Not
so
based
either.
on anything we saw.
And the fact that Toronto was looking at him too as a serious candidate is like, why can we see this and you can't? You know what I mean?
Yes.
That part to me just makes zero sense whatsoever. Even more so, Toronto is the same type of fire, pot that New York is, and you're going to bring in Peter Laviolette. Look, I don't actually hate Peter Laviolette. I think he was a terrible coach for the Rangers. I think he was put in a bad situation, and then I thought he became a little bitch about it. I don't think he's a bad coach. I just don't understand why a team like Los Angeles thinks this is the guy that's going to get them over the edge.
Yeah, I don't think he's a bad coach. I don't think he's the right coach for today's NHL.
Or for a team that can't get over the hump.
Or for a team that can't get over the hump. Or for a team that has leadership issues.
Well, and I mean, that's the other piece here, too. You're not just losing Anze Kopitar, the player. You were losing Anze Kopitar, the locker room presence.
Yep.
And you are going to a market that has not seen success since, the days of Jonathan Quick, basically.
Right. And now it looks like Toronto is circling around Joe Pavelski. And look, I don't know that that's an environment I'd want to put a head
Brand
coach
new
with
coach.
no experience. Like, I would just wait and see if Vegas changes their stance on Cassidy at the end of the playoffs. Or wait. I'm pretty sure Vegas is going to change their stance on Cassidy after Edmonton goes out and hires Mike Babcock, which is another
thing. That's another thing
we
need to talk about.
God. Oh my God. Mike Babcock. I don't.
Let's finish with Laviolette. Then we'll get to Babcock. Then we'll do questions.
And then I have one question for you.
Is it coaching related?
No, it is not. It is about a Ranger player.
Okay, so let's move on to Babcock quickly.
Okay.
Just for the people. if you didn't know, Mike Babcock was an enormously successful coach with the Detroit Red Wings. His name is on the Stanley Cup. Was widely considered one of the best coaches in the league. Mike Babcock was. I'm actually blanking on what happened. It was abuse stuff, right? What happened?
It was
with
abuse
Babcock?
stuff. It was abuse of like young, not like the Chicago Blackhawks. It was just
Correct.
a toxic environment in Toronto.
Well, I've completely blanked on Toronto. That's where it was. Went to Toronto, signed. I think it was a 7-year. It was like the most expensive coaching contract ever at the time. Had a really bad experience in Toronto. Was fired and then kind of blacklisted by the NHL. Interestingly enough, came back in 2023 as a changed man. Putting quotations around that for the people. And was fired by Columbus before they even played a single preseason game because he basically made all of the players give him access, like unfiltered access to their telephones.
Yes, he wanted to see all the pictures on their phones.
All the pictures on their phones and whatever else he was looking for. Fired. That guy got a second chance. Now you're giving him a third chance. And the question I'm going to ask you, Chip, there's absolutely no fucking way this is not a Connor McDavid sanctioned move. Correct?
Correct.
So the Edmonton Oilers, who have Connor McDavid for 2 more years because of that ridiculously stupid contract extension that he signed, there's no way they would make a coaching change of this magnitude and say, surprise Connor McDavid with this. So Connor McDavid thinks Mike Babcock is the player that is going to take them to the next level, where, by the way, and there's no definitive reporting on this, so take this for what it's worth, but there are a couple of reporters with some repute around Edmonton who are saying that players that are part of Edmonton, are already saying that if he is the head coach, they're out.
Well,
I don't think it's anybody like, it's not Draisaitl, obviously.
No, it's not going to be Draisaitl or Bouchard. Maybe it's Bouchard. I don't know. But I can't imagine. This has to be McDavid and Draisaitl have to be on board with this.
You would think.
I would think.
Well, McDavid has to be on board with it. I don't know if Draisaitl has to be on board with it, but McDavid has to be on board with it.
I think McDavid and Draisaitl have been in lockstep on a lot of what they're doing. Like, I don't think Draisaitl would have signed his extension if he didn't have conversations with McDavid that McDavid was going to stay for a little bit. So I'm operating on the assumption that the two of them are driving the ship on this. And
how is this what you want?
Maybe it's a question of, we want a guy who's going to come in here who is going to get some of these players off this team.
Is that it? Do you think that's it?
I think
it's Connor McDavid is looking for any way to win a Stanley Cup and thinks that Mike Babcock is a guy who can do it for him. But
Mike Babcock can't play goal.
He melted down in Toronto, melted down before he even got on the road in Columbus. And this is your god?
I don't know, man. Maybe he sees Mike Babcock the way teams see, John Tortorella. He's a terrible personality, but
John Tortorella and Mike Babcock could not be more different in that regard.
I know.
And listen, Tortorella's a fucking asshole. Don't get me wrong. Tortorella's generally speaking not an asshole to his players. His players love him. Mike Babcock is a problem. I just don't understand.
Babcock's going to be a problem. He's not going to be a problem for Leon or for McDavid. He's going to be a problem for younger guys like a Bouchard or fringe guys, because those are the guys who he traditionally bullies. Like,
he bullies that we're having this fucking conversation is wild.
Ridiculous.
It's so wild.
It's ridiculous.
How?
Then again,
you can't.
Look,
you have the best player in the NHL. You can't find anyone else that you want for this job?
Well, we had the same conversation about why is Anaheim bringing Joel Quenneville back.
Okay, but I'm not making
to...
that is a different argument than the argument I'm making.
Sure.
Joel Quenneville is in the same vein as Mike Babcock, which is I don't care about his past. This is somebody that is going to get us over the hump, or at least has in the past. I'm not arguing that is acceptable. I think he should not be coaching the NHL under any circumstances. That's not what I'm talking about. Anaheim probably would have not been able to acquire a coach of that level unless they went into the bin of like, you shouldn't touch this.
Yes.
Edmonton has 2 of the top 5 players in the NHL. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You need to go to Mike Babcock? The only way that makes sense is if Connor McDavid was like, here's a list of coaches that I want. Bruce Cassidy is a no. Carl is not. He's not taking the job in Toronto. There's no reason to do that either. And then it's Babcock, and it's like, all right, well, we went down the list, I guess. This is what we need to do now. That's the only way this makes sense if you're Edmonton.
Well, and also you have to remember Bowman's an idiot.
For sure. And that the fact that they stuck a knife in Chris Knobloch's back is, especially for the guy who coached him in juniors, beyond insane.
And by the way, doesn't Bowman have a relationship with Babcock? Because Scotty was in Detroit for a long time. Stan Bowman's dad was the Detroit Red Wings. So I don't know if there was overlap between Scotty Bowman and Mike Babcock in Detroit, that Stan has some sort of relationship with Babcock. And I think we have to stop saying Babcock.
All right, what's your question before we get to questions?
Gabe Perreault is up for an extension this July. What are you giving him?
As in 2 months from now? Do you have to give him anything right now?
No, but you can start negotiating.
You don't.
You don't throw a bag at him, lock him up long term.
Give him a 7-year, $21 million contract, you're saying?
Yep.
Sure. I would, if you're asking if I would be willing to take that risk, the answer is yes. I think he'd be insane to do that. With the rising cap, I would absolutely take a $3 million. But I could not see a world where he signs that.
What if you offered him $5 million?
I'm not giving him $5 million sight unseen for 7 years.
All right.
That
was my question.
Would you?
Yes. Because again, rising cap.
So you're talking a 5-year, $35 million, or a 7-year, $35 million.
7 years, $35 million deal. Yep. No protections, just 7 years, $35 million.
Okay, that I'm a little bit more in on it without the protections. I don't want to fuck with the Wi-Fi. Can you pull the questions up?
Yeah, I suppose. Most of them are for me, I think. And we touched on a bunch of them already.
Good, because I have 8 more minutes. You people are lucky that you get this kind of time from me with my travel schedule.
All right.
Charlie, you piece of shit.
JD the GM. Why do successful career AHL All-Stars rarely ever get the chance and or find success at the NHL level? In particular, he wants Treyfix Walensky to get in there.
Some guys are just quadruple A players.
Yeah, that's about it.
That is the answer. Some guys are just, they're not good enough to be anything more than a cup of coffee in the NHL type of guy.
Yep. 84 Jorts, Ombudsman Report. You forgot Derek Bugard on the 2000s Rangers basketball team.
Bugard sits pretty firmly in a, I don't really touch category because of what happened with him. His name has come up before. That whole situation was really sad. I do remember him being very tall, though. He also passed away, though. He can't. It just doesn't make sense. All right, to Bugard.
RB. JD the GM. Goal. He did. JD the GM also asks, does moving players to their opposite wing just to get them ice time do more harm than good? Personally, I'm not a fan of having wingers switching when they've played on one side of the ice their entire life. Eric would say yes.
Eric would say yes. Eric's also not on the show, so I don't have to listen to the diatribe about why he would say yes. If the option is no ice time at the NHL level or ice time off wing, I see no reason not to at least give it a shot. And then if it doesn't work out, like no one's development is going to be fucking halted because they happen to play on their off wing for a couple of weeks.
Right. And then he also asks, is the development of prospects at the AHL level really that important? Yes, it is. A lot of these kids, this is their first experience away from home. And it is hard to be 20 years old. It is hard to live in New York. It is hard to be 20 years old and live in New York. And it is super hard to be 20 years old living in New York with no supervision and all of the money you could possibly want.
It also integrates them into the way you want to play hockey games. This is the problem that the Rangers have, is they do not integrate players into the New York Rangers style of play.
Right.
Players play different positions. Oh, you know what we did not talk about?
Jay Leach.
Jay Leach, absolutely perfect hire. I actually wanted him for the head coaching job when Peter Laviolette got the job. I think this is a genuine sign of the Rangers starting to take Hartford seriously. And having Jay Leach down there, I don't think he'll last until the end of the Mike Sullivan contract. But I could not be happier with that hiring. I think that is...
I'm thrilled.
Absolutely. It shows that the Rangers are taking it seriously down there and that they're actually doing something about it.
And especially this year when you're going to have Nathan Aspinall and Liam Greentree and probably Scott Morrow all, in that AHL team, having a guy like Jay Leach down there who is a no bullshit guy, who's a real coach,
who can develop
develop people and be on the same page with Sullivan in how he wants them developed. I think that is huge for the Rangers.
So do I. That is an I can't believe we didn't talk about that. Unbelievably intelligent hire.
It's Eric's fault we didn't talk about it.
It is Eric's fault.
Because he didn't want to talk about the wolf pack. That is actually it for the questions. There's questions from me and Chris about limit. Well, Chris asks a different question about the no trade protection. And that's, do you think we will ever see trade protection limited in the NHL? I feel like there should be some sort of cap, like with salary retention, limiting each team to 3 players with trade protection at a time. Seems like an effective way to manage that and limit it to actual franchise pieces. I do not.
So you're not wrong, but you need to remember that the players are never, that would have to be agreed upon by the NHLPA. And why would the NHL Players Association ever, under any circumstances, limit the amount of protection they would give to their players?
And also you're shooting yourself in the foot, because if you can't offer trade protection to players, you're not going to get players.
Well, but you're saying that from the standpoint of like everybody can do it. If you're limiting how many people can do it, most people, like, there may not be a market where that would be possible, where it would be a differentiating factor. And yeah. Well, Chip, thank you. I appreciate you doing this early in the day. I know this was not ideal for you either. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for listening. Blueshirtbanter.com. $85 a year gets you all your ad-free access to the New York Rangers. $40 a year gets you access to the Discord tier. We're going to do more stuff in there. We got to figure that part out. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to us, leave us 5 stars, leave us a nice review, talk about how much you love Chip and I. Blueshirtbanter.com, youtube.com/BlueshirtBanter, Facebook.com/BlueshirtBanter, and if you so decide, BlueshirtBanter.com/BlueshirtBanter. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for listening. We will see you next week. Bye for now.
Peace out.